Welcome back. Anyone with a variable mortgage right now is waiting month to month for the RBA to make more hiking decisions. It's already been a bleak time. There's one idea put forward to try to alleviate that. Joining me live is Liberal Senator Andrew Bragg. Thanks for your time. So you want people to have their super balances to offset their mortgages. How this work? You've got to obviously convert it into cash and then have it as an offset. It'd be that simple, would it?
I think at the moment people are battling with much higher interest rates and much higher mortgage repayments than we would like. And if people have a large sum of money that's their own money, they should be able to use it to offset their extortionate interest costs.
There's always a case of an individual and then the overall effect. So for an individual, they go, great, I'd like to do that. But then it blunts RBA rate rises because then tens or hundreds of thousands of people aren't paying extra and aren't pulling in spending and inflation's not coming down. So the RBA would have to hike rates even more.
You're still using your own money. And I've seen some of the commentary today which suggests that this is the only way to beat inflation. I mean, the way to beat inflation is for the government in Canberra to stop spending so much. And when we had the governor of the bank, Reserve Bank, Michelle Bullock, into Senate estimates, she made it very clear that the government is running a neutral fiscal policy, not a contractionary fiscal policy.
We'll talk about that in a minute. But on this impact as well, Michelle Bullock's also said, people need to feel pain, unfortunately, and that means higher mortgage payments to then spend less. This would mean they wouldn't be spending less, so then interest rates would go even higher.
It might be okay for a very wealthy person, but for a person of average means, if you have a large mortgage and you have a pool of money there, you should be able to deploy it to reduce your interest costs. I mean, it's a very big impost on people's lives and day-to-day living.
But the net impact, again, in that broad sense is, first of all, you get no return on your super, so your super doesn't grow because normally it's using returns to grow. Instead, it's being offset. And the RBA would have to increase rates more, surely, because these people are not getting hit hard, and that means the money's sort of disappearing.
Well, Tom, the single determinant of whether you're going to have a successful financial retirement is whether you own your own house. It's not your super balance. So I think all ideas are worth exploring at this juncture.
Have you modelled this at all?
We'll be doing some work on it. I think it's worth exploring. I mean, I don't know why you'd want to rule out any ideas because, I mean, Labor's agenda is just to have super locked away for the big super funds and Wayne Swan and all these sort of people. But
I'm not ruling it out. I'm stress testing it. But when you have that modelled, will you include whether it will just mean rates go higher by a percentage point?
Of course. We look at everything.
Yeah. Okay. So on the surface of it, though, would that, if it does make rates go higher, it's failed as an idea, hasn't it?
I think you've got to look at all the outworkings of new policies. But the reality is that using super for housing is a sound idea. Now, Labor doesn't want to
do it. But it doesn't mean use it. If you have that principle,
there's different ways you could use it, right? It's not just taking cash out. There's ways you could use it as equity or debt. There's different ways you could use it.
So you'll model this. What about the coalition's broader idea of using super to buy a first house? Will that be modelled as to what, for example, it would do to increase the price for first home buyers and therefore, again, be somewhat self-defeating?
Tom, everyone knows the big game in terms of housing is supply. Encouraging states and local governments to provide more houses, but to build more houses, to approve more developments. But where you can use your own money to get a house, you should be able to use it. I mean, super is the people's money.
But that'll be modelled. Can we get some modelling for that of some sort?
Sure, of course.
So when the coalition's, actual plan on this, because at the moment it's an idea rather than a plan, that'll have modelling, will it? On what it'll do to the housing market, first home buyers market, all of that.
Well, I can tell you that Labor have just introduced a bill into the Parliament which wants to define what the purpose of super is. Now, we think that super should be used for housing. So as part of that inquiry in the Senate, we'll be looking to get a whole lot of numbers on the table about how super can be used for housing.
I like numbers. We'll look forward to them. What about inflation more broadly? So we've got the mid-year budget update. The RBA says it's neutral. You think it should be contractionary? Yeah. If so, how should it be contractionary?
Well, the main point is not to spend any more money. And in the
that won't be contractionary, though.
But in the last budget, the Treasurer spent another $50 billion in new decisions taken. So I think the first test is, can he please not spend any more money, which is going to make a bad situation worse.
Okay. So if he banks the improvements, you'll give it a tick?
It's not just the improvements, it's just not spending new money on new programs.
Right, understand that, but that is effectively banking the improvements. There isn't something beyond that to be contractionary. Do we need to do spending cuts from the current plans?
Well, they're also expanding the size and the scope of the Commonwealth Public Service, as you know.
Reducing fees on those pesky big four, though, aren't they?
Well, that may be a laudable objective, but we also don't want to see an ever larger public service.
Except all this outsourcing doesn't seem to have been going that well as well when you look at PwC. Maybe a slightly bigger public service is okay.
Sure, but I mean, the point is that the RBA itself has said the government is not running a contractionary position. They've raised interest rates 13 times under this government, and I would have thought that it would be ideal for the government to support the RBA's work here.
So will that mean if it should be contractionary, you'll say here are some things they should cut? Because that's what you have to be from here to be contractionary. You've got to have spending cuts or raise taxes.
The starting point
I think you're not going to go for that
The starting point is no new spending.
But if it's contractionary, the starting point is plus some cuts.
Well, I've just said I don't think they should be expanding the Commonwealth public servants.
Okay, so don't go ahead with the expansion of that.
Well, I don't see the case for it.
Okay. Andrew Bragg, appreciate your time.
Thanks.
A new strain on Queensland's health system has been